A man can give all his love to a woman. He cares, he listens, he shows up. But because his presence is constant, always available, it slowly begins to be treated as something ordinary. Instead of being appreciated, she gets used to the idea that he will always be there, no matter how she acts. At some point, patience and genuine affection get placed in the same box labeled as obvious. And once something becomes obvious, it often gets undervalued. The woman no longer feels its true worth. Then one day, he goes silent. No more morning messages. No more unexpected calls just to check in. No more certainty in the moments she once took for granted. And the moment that silence arrives, she starts to notice an emptiness growing inside. That absence is like a missing beat in a song. When the melody is no longer seamless, it is the pause that makes the entire composition suddenly stand out. What was once dismissed now becomes the very thing that makes the heart restless. Silence, simple as it seems, turns into the strongest reminder. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't shout, yet it forces a person to look directly at what they overlooked. That is when she realizes there was a value present for so long that she dismissed it. And now, with it gone, everything becomes clear. People often only recognize value when it's no longer there. When someone steps back, we begin to measure the present against what we once had. The kind words, the quiet patience, the trust that never needed to be explained. All of it becomes memory, and memory can haunt more powerfully than presence ever could. This silence reveals a paradox. When you are still there, she feels everything is normal. When you leave, she feels deprived. What unsettles her heart isn't the grand gestures, but the loss of those small habits she once treated as ordinary. That's when longing slips in. Quiet, yet persistent and haunting. For a man, silence is not just withdrawal. It is also the affirmation that he knows his own worth. He doesn't need to shout to prove it. His silence alone is enough to command attention. And in that silence, the woman begins to question herself. Why does this emptiness feel so heavy? Why do I miss the things I once brushed aside? Why does the absence of one man unsettle me so deeply? If you step away, who will feel the emptiness the most? That question itself becomes the awakening bell, not only for her, but for anyone who has ever taken genuine love for granted. When you stop reaching out. Women often grow up with the feeling of being pursued. Society, movies, even everyday stories all reinforce an unspoken belief that men must be the ones to initiate. They get used to being texted first, being asked about their day, being the center of someone's effort. And when this happens day after day, it becomes a habit, a foundation that convinces them such affection will never stop. But when a man stops reaching out, the entire balance shifts. No more text notifications, no more ringing phone calls, just a quiet pause. And yet that silence creates a loud echo in her mind. She may not admit it at first, but uneasiness begins to creep in. A habit she thought was permanent has vanished, and that's what truly unsettles her. The truth is, relationships rarely collapse because of arguments. They usually begin to crumble when the familiar care disappears. It is the silence, not the harsh words, that stirs the heart the most. When he goes silent, she starts checking her phone more often. When he doesn't text, she waits for a message that never comes. When he doesn't call, she imagines 100 reasons why. And in that empty space, fear begins to take root. It's simple but powerful. One text left unsent, one call never made, one absence in the daily rhythm can shake her more than any long speech. Because when a man stops initiating, He's not just stopping an action, he's creating space for her to see her own dependence. People usually only appreciate what they lose. When he shows up every day, his presence feels like a given. But when he pulls back, that sense of certainty turns into anxiety. And here lies the paradox. She might have once said she needed space. She wanted freedom. But when he is no longer there, she is the one who feels the emptiness. This reflects a deeper truth about human psychology. Any presence that is not appreciated eventually fades, and its absence becomes the strongest reminder of its value. Value does not lie in endlessly proving yourself through repeated effort. It is revealed in the moment you stop, when the heart on the other side finally realizes what it had. How many men have held onto a relationship only because they feared that if they disappeared, it would all fall apart. But the real question is if a relationship survives only because of one person's constant effort, is it even worth keeping? The reality is, when you're afraid to disappear, you forget your own worth. True love cannot survive if one person always runs forward while the other only knows how to receive. When you stop reaching out, she will feel confused, and she will ask herself why. She will feel uneasy, even anxious. But for you, stopping is not a game. It is the affirmation that love only has meaning when it is valued. And if it is not, silence becomes the clearest answer. And from that silence, the truth emerges. Who needs whom more? Who really feels the emptiness when the other pulls away? How many times in your life have you stayed in a relationship just because you feared that your absence would leave a void? But perhaps the real question is this: whose heart does that void truly belong to? When small things become an empty space, a relationship is not built on expensive gifts or rare dramatic moments. It is nurtured by the small, simple habits repeated so often that we begin to believe they no longer matter. A steady good morning text, a gentle question after work, an attentive look that notices you are tired even when you insist you are fine. All of these little things piece together a sense of peace, a feeling of being loved and cared for. But people have a dangerous habit. When something shows up too often, we assume it will always be there. We stop noticing it, stop appreciating it, and sometimes even find it annoying. Only when those things disappear does the emptiness begin to take shape. And that emptiness is not just the absence of a single action, but the absence of memories and emotions that once defined the rhythm of everyday life. Picture a garden. It does not thrive because of occasional heavy rains, but because of the small drops of water given each day. When the watering stops, the garden does not wither immediately, but day by day the leaves begin to fade, the green begins to pale, until one day you realize the garden has changed. Love is no different. When those small gestures stop, she begins to feel the quiet withering inside. She will notice that no one else does it the way you did. A new man may appear, bringing a spark of excitement for a moment, but lacking the patience, the quiet attention, the subtle care you once gave. A fine dinner cannot replace the comfort of someone remembering your favorite snack. A trip abroad cannot substitute the safety of a goodnight message. And that is why, when you stop, the emptiness you leave cannot be filled by anyone else. People think love is held together by grand gestures, but the truth is that it is sustained by small actions repeated until they form the foundation. They are like breathing. No one remembers every breath, but if it stops, the whole body falters. In relationship, When she no longer receives those small gestures, the lack of them makes her feel more unsteady than anything else. And again, the paradox emerges, and when the small things are still present, they are taken for granted. But once they are gone, they become memories that haunt. In the stillness of the night, when her phone does not light up with a familiar message, the longing begins to rise. When a tiny detail reminds her of you, the emptiness rushes back. The absence of small things becomes the largest emptiness of all. This raises an important question for anyone listening. Are you undervaluing the small gestures someone makes for you? Are you dismissing the thoughtful words and subtle care simply because they feel too familiar? Because when they disappear, you will realize those were the very bricks that built the foundation of love. And once the foundation cracks, the house of emotions collapses faster than you expect. The emptiness left by small things cannot be filled by grand gestures. It can only be answered by appreciation while they are still present. If not, one day you will look back and realize that what breaks your heart is not the great things you never had, but the simple things you let slip away. When she pretends to be calm, there are moments when you look at her and see an unusual calmness. Her face still bright, her smile still full. She even tries to show that she is living better than ever. To outsiders, it might look as if she has truly moved on, as if she is completely at peace. But the truth is very different. Behind that facade, her mind is spinning with countless questions that have no answers. This is how the human defense mechanism works. When facing loss or regret, people often choose to pretend they are fine, as if putting on a shield to hide their vulnerability. But the more they try to shield themselves, the more chaos brews inside. It's like a lake that looks perfectly still on the surface, while underneath strong undercurrents are swirling and pulling everything into their depths. This is the great paradox of pretending. The harder she tries to prove she's fine, the more she traps herself in contradiction. During the day, she may laugh and talk as if nothing is missing, but at night, she wrestles with emptiness, with a nameless sense of unease. She doesn't speak it out loud, but she knows, and the haunting only grows stronger, day after day. Inside her, a stream of questions repeats endlessly. Has he truly forgotten me? Is he happier without me? Has he already found someone new? These questions have no answers, but your silence makes them louder and heavier. And the longer there is no reply, the deeper her mind sinks into the spiral of anxiety. Sometimes a smile is not an expression of joy, but a mask to cover panic. A smile can fool others, but it cannot fool a heart that beats in turmoil. The more she tries to act like she doesn't care, the more it shows she is unsettled. The more she tries to prove her strength, the more it reveals the fear that lingers beneath. In truth, this is not rare. People often use pretense to protect their pride, to hide that they have lost something valuable. But that pretense only works for others. Inside, it is nothing more than an unspoken confession. She might smile more, go out more, post pictures that look full of energy. Yet all of it is only to fill the emptiness she refuses to face. What you need to understand is that the calmness she shows is not real. It is the wall she builds to hide the cracks inside. And sometimes, that very wall makes the pain heavier, because she must hold on to the image while the truth eats away within. In the quiet moments, when there is no one left to perform for, the mask falls away, and that is when her greatest fear emerges. The fear that she has lost a man who cannot be replaced. The fear that the things she once took for granted are gone forever. The fear that her calmness is nothing more than an illusion her heart cannot accept. How many times have you believed in a calm appearance without seeing the chaos within? How many times have you thought someone forgot you, when in reality, the emptiness inside them had never been filled? Calmness is not always real. Often, it is just the mask covering a storm. And when you realize that, you see the truth more clearly. It is your silence that forces her to live in that paradox every single day. The battle between ego and longing. Inside every person, two opposing forces exist. On one side is the ego, whispering not to bow, not to admit mistakes, not to let the other see weakness. On the other side are emotions, quietly reminding that the heart still remembers, still regrets, still craves connection. When these two forces clash, the soul becomes a battlefield filled with exhaustion. On the surface, ego often wins. It keeps her from sending the first message. It forces her to hold back the urge to apologize. It tells her to stay silent just to see if you still care. But when night falls and the outside noise disappears, emotions rise again. A flood of questions spins through her mind. What is he doing now? Has he truly forgotten me? Is he laughing with someone else? These questions never find answers, yet your silence makes them louder. And in that silence, sleep becomes a luxury she cannot afford. Ego wants to protect her sense of power. It insists that reaching out means losing. But emotions don't care about winning or losing. They only know that longing is growing stronger, filling the spaces your absence has left behind. And so inside her, a battle plays out over and over, unseen by anyone else. This tug of war traps her in contradiction. By day, she pretends to be strong, but by night, she quietly wrestles with regret. By day, she wears a proud smile, but inside, she trembles at the thought that it might truly be over. This is the deep fatigue created when ego and longing wage war. In truth, this battle doesn't happen only in love. It is a universal rule of human psychology. Ego can silence us when we should speak, make us let go when we should hold on, and turn us cold when our hearts crave warmth. But real emotions never disappear. They may be buried, but eventually, like a seed hidden deep in the soil, they find a way to break through and grow. Many men fail to recognize this. They see her silence, her calm facade, and believe she no longer thinks of them. But the truth is, behind that appearance, emotions are still alive, only trapped under ego's control. Every time she stares at her phone without dialing your number. Every time a memory surfaces, but she forces herself to ignore it. These are all signs of that hidden battle. The lesson lies here. Ego can delay the truth, but it cannot erase it. It can keep her quiet for days, weeks, even months. But real emotions remain, burning slowly, waiting for their chance to emerge. Truth always finds its way to be acknowledged, no matter how much we try to deny it. And now, the question turns to you. How many times have you let someone else's ego decide how they treat you? How many times have you accepted coldness, believing it was real, when in fact their heart was screaming underneath? The battle between ego and longing is not hers alone. It is a lesson for anyone. A reminder that real emotions will always outlast pride. And if you ever find yourself caught in that same struggle, remember this ego may hide in silence, but the heart never lies. When you shine without her. When a man is trapped in a relationship where he isn't valued, his light is often dimmed. He spends too much time proving his worth, holding on to love, trying to meet the expectations of someone who never truly appreciated his presence. But when he decides to stop, when he pulls his energy out of that meaningless cycle, a new journey begins. This journey is no longer about making her happy. It is about rebuilding himself. And in that process, she cannot avoid witnessing the change. The man who once needed her to feel enough is no longer the same. The man who once sought her approval now walks his own path, shining from within. That transformation is like a forgotten gem left in the corner. Covered in dust, it seemed worthless. But once cleaned and placed under the light, it shines so brightly that the one who neglected it feels a pang of regret. Your glow doesn't come from showing off or trying to prove something. It comes from true growth. You begin to focus on your health, your career, the dreams you once left behind. You live with a newfound confidence, no longer placing your happiness in someone else's hands. And strangely enough, the moment you stop chasing validation is the moment you become the most attractive version of yourself. She will notice, whether she wants to or not. She will see that you have changed. What was once familiar is gone. You are no longer the man who gave up everything just to chase. You are no longer locked inside the cage of needing her. You have stepped out, breathing freely, and that light is something she cannot ignore. In that moment, a painful truth dawns on her. She realizes it was never you who needed her to survive. It was her who needed you to feel secure. And when you shine without her, regret floods in. Regret for overlooking your worth. Regret for letting that light slip away. Regret for losing a man who no longer prioritizes her. Here lies an important truth. There is no revenge more powerful than growth and genuine happiness. Revenge through anger or harsh words only creates more wounds. But when you evolve, when you live peacefully and fully, your silence becomes the loudest declaration. It doesn't wound through bitterness. It forces the other person to confront themselves. Men are often taught to hold on, to prove, to fight not to lose. But the truth is, real strength sometimes lies in letting go and focusing on yourself. When you shine with your inner worth, without needing anyone's approval, you step into another level. And in that place, you become free, strong, and deeply attractive in a way no one can deny. The final question is simple but profound. If today you grew beyond measure, if you became the brightest version of yourself, who would feel the most regret? And more importantly, would you even care about that regret anymore? Because when you truly shine, the answer no longer matters. The only thing that does is the light you carry enough to illuminate your own path, whether anyone else recognizes it or not. When silence becomes a mirror, there is something many people don't realize. Silence can be more powerful than any accusation. When you choose not to speak, not to explain, not to hold on anymore, your silence forces her to face herself. She no longer has you as a reflection to measure her worth against. She no longer has you as an excuse to place blame. In that moment, the only opponent left is her own inner world. Silence is like a room once filled with voices that suddenly falls quiet. When the familiar sound disappears, the emptiness becomes haunting. Footsteps echo awkwardly through the space, and the only thing she hears is the hollow sound coming from within herself. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a mirror that reveals everything she tried to ignore. When you were present, she could distract herself by testing you, blaming you, or dismissing you. But when you go silent, those games have no stage left to play out. She is forced to listen to the questions echoing in her own head. Why isn't he calling? Why isn't he texting? How can he be so calm? And those very questions cut through her pride like sharp blades. The philosophy here is clear: silence is not emptiness. It is judgment in its most profound form. And this judgment doesn't come from someone else. It comes from within. No scolding words can cause the same torment as hearing your own truth out loud inside your mind. That is what silence does. In silence, she has to face the truth that she once took your presence for granted. She has to admit that the peace you brought has vanished. She has to recognize that the small things she dismissed have now become the great losses. And more than that, she must accept that you are no longer the man revolving around her. You are the man who stands on his own. What unsettles her most is not that you left, but that you left in silence. Because silence leaves space for her imagination to run wild, and every scenario leads to the same fear: you have truly let go. She will start searching for signs, checking if you appear somewhere, looking for your name online, asking mutual friends. But the more she searches and finds nothing, the deeper the fear grows. Your silence creates a paradox. You are doing nothing at all, yet she feels punished. Because before, you were always there, always responding, always proving up. Now, when the response is gone, she understands the balance has shifted. Without you to reflect on, she is forced to look directly into herself. And here is the truth: sometimes silence is the strongest language. It doesn't need words to point out mistakes. It doesn't need arguments to prove who is right or wrong. It simply places the other person in a stillness deep enough to hear their own heart. And when there is no one else to drown it out, that voice becomes impossible to ignore. In your silence, what she hears most clearly may not be your absence, but the sound of her own soul. Perhaps that is why silence makes people more restless than any words ever could. Because silence doesn't allow escape. It demands confrontation. And in that moment, the truth stands naked, the truth that she lost something she only now realizes cannot be replaced. When you are no longer taken for granted. There comes a point in life when a man spends too much time trying to prove his worth in the eyes of others. He chases, he sacrifices, he ignores his own boundaries just to be acknowledged. But then one day, he stops. And that stopping is not surrender. It is the moment he sees the truth: his worth never depended on someone else's recognition. It was always within him. When a man truly understands his own value, he no longer lives to be chosen. He lives to choose. He is no longer the one standing at the crossroads, waiting for someone else to decide his fate. He becomes the one who draws his own path, walking it with unshakable confidence. A mountain does not need praise to be majestic. It stands tall simply because of its nature. A man is the same. When he knows his own worth, he does not need validation to prove it. He does not need to be picked to know he deserves it. His presence is already the evidence. This is where a rare kind of freedom is born. True freedom is not when someone else needs you. True freedom is when you are strong enough not to need their validation. When you reach that state, no rejection can shake you. No indifference can make you doubt yourself. Because you know that their lack of recognition does not diminish what you already are. In that moment, she may begin to regret. She may see the change clearly. She may realize you are no longer the man who could be overlooked or treated as an option. She sees that the calmness in your eyes is the very thing she once dismissed. But her regret comes too late. Because when you have risen beyond her reach, her feelings no longer hold power over you. Here lies the greatest paradox. When you crave recognition, you are easy to dismiss. But when you no longer need it, You become the very version others cannot ignore. Not because you demanded it, but because confidence and peace have a magnetic force of their own. A man who knows his worth no longer proves himself with desperate words or relentless effort. He proves it with the way he lives, by setting standards for himself and refusing to accept less than he deserves, by walking his own road without asking permission, by letting his calmness speak louder than any argument ever could. She may look back and regret. She may remember what she lost, compare you to others, and find no one measures up. But her regret cannot bring you back, because you have changed. You are no longer someone to be taken for granted, no longer someone who puts his love in the wrong place. You have risen not for revenge, but to live fully and completely. And now, the question no longer rests with her, it rests with you. Will you keep living to be recognized, or will you live as the proof of your own value? Only by choosing the second do you find real freedom. Freedom from dependence, freedom from the gaze of others, freedom from the fear of being left behind. When you are no longer taken for granted, you not only change how others see you, but you change how you see the world. You no longer chase acceptance, because you have already accepted yourself. And once you reach that point, nothing can bind you. That is the moment a man steps out of the shadows of doubt and stands in the light of his own being. That is when you realize you do not need someone to complete you, because you were already complete. And once you know this, every dismissal becomes meaningless. You are the mountain standing tall, not needing recognition, yet forever majestic. She may regret, she may feel the weight of what she lost, but you have moved beyond her reach. And that truth, more than any words, is the clearest evidence of your irreplaceable worth.